got a lot of things to look at tonight, and we're going to study what I think is probably the best period of Bible history because it's the one we know the least about. You feel like you know Genesis? Yeah, if I talk about those 15 years of Bible history, go ahead and put that second slide up. It's got all those 15 years period of history. You look at on the left side of that screen up there. That's pretty good, all the way down to the judges and even, King Saul, down to King David and King Solomon. We do real good. But when we get to the top of that second column up there, it's like entering into a fog. You know what that's like driving down the highway? We're that way sometimes in Bible study. We know so much about this, and we know individual characters in the studies we're looking at tonight, and that is the divided kingdom, and then after the fall of the northern kingdom, where only have the southern kingdom, Judah, and then the captivity. And I don't know if we'll be able to cover all this tonight. Now, I'm not going to criticize God, but I sure needed another week to teach this. And having to skip last week has really messed all of this up because we got about 2 classes to deal with these last 4 things that are there. And so that's going to really have to cover a lot, but we won't go nearly as deep. Tonight's lesson, I would encourage you to go to the website and listen to it more than once. Not because I'm a good teacher, but because we don't know what happened in Jewish history. We know these periods of the judges, or these periods of the Bible. We know the creation. We get all the way over to the period of the judges. We do good with the judges, do we not? If I talk about, if you're left-handed, you remember the left-handed judge? You remember what his name was? Well, I did this to a little Pew Packers class one time, a little boy. What was a left-handed judge? And he raised his hand and was shaking his hand and I pointed at him. He said, "It wasn't Robin Hood." No, it wasn't Robin Hood, it was Ehud, okay? And that's helped me to remember the left-handed judge, So if you're going to raise your hand, raise your left hand, and it's not Robin Hood, it's Ehud. But what about the strong judge? Yeah, you know that. The woman judge? Yeah, What about the guy that had an army of 300? We know the judges. What happens after the judges? They've become a nation. God promised Abraham, "I'll make of you a great nation." Put them down in the land of Egypt, brought them out. Joshua took them into the land. They're in the land. They're ruled by judges. And then they say, "We don't want judges. We want to be like the nations around us. Give us a king that we can see." So he gives them, look at the slide about the judges and everything, and that's just to indicate, and you probably won't be able to read all of that, but that's just the judges lived all over in various places. It's not like they were all in the city of Jerusalem, and they came to Jerusalem and they judged from that city. Wasn't that at all? They're not really a nation as we would think about a nation. They are tribes, and if you can think about Indian tribes in America, that gives you some idea when we talk about the 12 tribes of Israel. They're distinct. They're all the same. They're one nation. They're all descendants of Jacob, all descendants of Israel. They're children of Jacob, children of Israel. They're Israelites. They're Jacobites, and yet they are divided into clans. Or perhaps that's a better way to describe them rather than tribes, though the word tribes is used in the Bible. Joshua gets them into the land. They're ruled by judges. And there are 15 of those judges. And then finally, let's go to that next slide. We get to the period of the kings. We do pretty good here. If I talk about events in the life of the judges, we know a lot about that. And who does not know about David and Goliath? We know where that is. Where are we chronologically? Well, it's not exactly accurate, but I always, in my mind, think about David living at 1000 BC. I've got Moses over here at 500 BC, and I've got David at about 1000 BC. Just to give you a reference to the period of the judges and the period of all of these kings that are there. And sometimes that really helps me if I can just sort of lay out the number of years between these events and everything. David dies, and so Solomon takes his place. And when all of that happens, an amazing thing happens, and that is this great kingdom. Thought I had the pointer in my pocket. I got my car keys there. This great nation, and Solomon reigns every bit of this, now becomes two nations. There's the land of Egypt, river of Egypt, right down in that area, and the Euphrates River would be all the way up here. So Solomon's kingdom went from here all the way down almost to the borders of Egypt. Massively world power. What happens when Solomon dies and we're driving down the interstate doing 65, 70 miles an hour, and all of a sudden it says fog ahead. And that's where we're headed. And what I want to try to do is get this simple enough so we can get a handle to hold it by. I don't know that we'll be able to do it, but we've got a lot of ground to cover. On the left side of the screen, there's an area that is blue. We're going to put some notes over there on the left side. And those notes that will eventually be showing over here in this area is going to talk about this northern kingdom. Now, when Solomon dies, it goes from here all the way up to the Euphrates rivers. It's an amazingly powerful kingdom. They rebel against Solomon's son. They go to Solomon's son and says, taxes have been too high. And he goes and he asks the old wise men, what do you do? And wise men told Solomon's son, you better lower their taxes. And he goes to the young men. Young men know far more than older men do. And the young men said, well, tell them you're going to increase their taxes. And so he says, my father had his thumb on you that's this big. I'm going to magnify that to the girth of my waist, that's how much I'm going to put that on you. And so they rebel against him. And you need to understand what happens. Judah goes all the way down here, but Judah doesn't have much land at all, because when Solomon dies, people like the Philistines come over, and the Moabites and others. Judah stops really about right here. And that's about where Judah stops, not even all the way down to the bottom of the map, because they immediately begin losing all of this land. That's close to 85% of the Jewish nation. Judah is an insignificant part of the nation. But you've got to understand, they are the ones who follow the house of David, and Jesus had to be a descendant of David. So when they leave, whenever they leave and they become a separate kingdom, the kingdom is immediately divided. Now let me ask you this. Do you know the dates of the death of Solomon and the date for the end of the northern kingdom? That's an important date. Go ahead and put that next slide up. And the dates are 931 BC. You count backwards as you go, 931 is before Christ. You count downward. 200 years, 210 years about. That's how long that kingdom exists. Now, as you read 1 Kings and 2 Kings, you're going to read about this northern kingdom. As you read that, you read in 1 Kings, and the reason it's so hard to understand is 1 Kings will talk about what's happening here, and then immediately the next chapter it's down here, and then the next chapter is up here, and maybe the next chapter is up here, and maybe the next chapter is up here, and then get back down here, and it's just flip-flop, flip-flop. Your windshield wipers on your screen, that's the way it is when you read Kings and Chronicles, and you get lost. Because sometimes they'll have the same name. The king in the south will have the same name, not concurrently, we'll have a name that's very, very similar, if not the very, very same name. Well, how do you deal with that? Well, if you know the books of the Old Testament, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. What's the difference in those? What's the difference in the book of Kings and Chronicles? The book of Chronicles ignores the northern kingdom. And the book of Chronicles is the chronology of that southern kingdom. So whenever Solomon dies, they have tremendous problems and situations with that northern kingdom. They interface with them. They are a problem. But when you're reading in Kings, I can never remember which one I'm reading about. I've got to have me a sheet of paper. And that's what I do. I draw a line right down the middle of the paper, and I put kings of the one and kingdoms of the other. Now, the northern kingdom has a name. Does anybody remember the name of the northern kingdom? There are two names. One is Israel, the other is Judah. For the longest time, I never could remember which was the north and which was the south. And you know, I know you think I'm insane. Can I tell you the way insane people remember it? It might help you. I and J. Your eyes and your jaws. That's farther north. That's the eyes are farther north. And once I stuck it in there that way, and you don't have to be insane to remember it. You just have to know a guy who is insane enough to tell you how insane people remember this. But it'll really help you, because whenever you're reading over there in Kings and Chronicles, and in the 15th year of the reign of so-and-so, king of Judah, so-and-so began to reign in Israel. And in the so-and-so year of the reign of so-and-so, king of Israel, so-and-so began reigning in the southern kingdom or in Judah, and it's just flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. And so what I do if I'm studying Kings, I just take me a piece of paper. I draw a line right down the middle. And so I put the name of that southern kingdom is Israel. It's the northern kingdom. I know how you spells I just like the way you say I. It helps me, okay? It's the I's and the J's, Israel and Judah. All right? How many tribes? We've already shown geographically how many it was. There were 12 tribes. How many of them rebelled against the house of Solomon? 10 of them rebelled against the house of Solomon. And so you've got that. Now, as you read the Old Testament, it's very helpful to know the principal tribe of that northern kingdom. Because when you read Hosea, and we're studying that on Tuesday morning, and I'd encourage you on Tuesday mornings to come. You will enjoy this. We're studying about the end of this northern kingdom on Tuesday mornings right now. What's that kingdom up there? It's Israel. What's the main tribe? Because sometimes Hosea will not call them Israel. Sometimes he calls them Israel. Sometimes he calls them by the capital city. Sometimes he calls them by the major tribe. And the major tribe of that northern kingdom was Ephraim. That will help you, not as you read Kings and Chronicles, but when you get over reading the minor prophets especially, and they want to talk about that northern kingdom. You know, they will call it by one of those three names: Israel, or Ephraim, or the other name, the capital city. We'll mention that in just a minute. We ask this a lot. How many kings were there in that northern kingdom? 200 years. How many kings are there? Do you know that number? I hope you know it's 19. That's a good number to remember. How many of those kings were good kings?
Not very many.
Not a single one. Now you've got to understand, Solomon reigns 40 years, and the last half of his reign, maybe the last 3/4 of his reign, he was idolatrous. So you could add another 30 years to that 210 years. That's 250 years. How old's America? 250 years. Suppose 250 years ago, forget about the Pilgrims, forget about all of the things that happened. Suppose 250 years ago, all of a sudden, all we knew is no knowledge at all of Christianity. Where on earth would America be? Without the influence of Christ in America, influence of belief in God, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Isn't that amazing? Now suppose one nation under Baal, one nation under Ashtaroth, some pagan gods. What if for the last 250 years, how godly, what kind of morals would we have? And that's what happened. That's what happens whenever that happens. There are no good kings. And some of the names are names you would recognize. If I say Ahab, you know Mrs. Ahab, don't you? Ahab and who? Jezebel. Who's that? That's a king or queen up there in that northern kingdom. Are you aware that their daughter, Ahab and Jezebel's daughter, married the southern king? How's that for introducing ungodliness down into that southern kingdom? It's such an interesting period of time. That's some of those golden nuggets. Who's the first king? You need to know this. Jeroboam. And I'll show you in just a minute why you need to know this. Jeroboam, though he's the first king, is mentioned for nearly the next 20 chapters. Look, and this is not a complete thing, but you start right up here, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and followed the sin of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. He departed not therefrom. Well, that's in chapter 13. Look down to get to verse 11. Oh, there's another king. He departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. Go to the next chapter. What about that? He departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, the sons of Nebat. Chapter 15. He departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, the sons of Nebat. 9 verses later, same chapters. He departed not from all the days of his life from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. 6 more verses later, he departed not from the sins of Jeroboam. And then 4 verses later, he departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, the sons of Nebat. You got to know Jeroboam. What's the first thing he does whenever he becomes king? He introduces worship of golden calves. He's not a dumb king. He says, I'm all of these Jews, and they've got to go back to Jerusalem for those 3 yearly feasts of the Jews. And because they've got to go back for those 3 yearly feasts, if they keep going back down there, it won't be long before they'll reunite. And so what he did, he built idols right on the northern border of the southern kingdom. So as you went in that direction, down into that area, you didn't have to go all the way to Jerusalem. It's just too long. You don't have to go that far. Stop and worship God right here. We're going to all worship the same God. And so he introduces idolatry. And there's not a godly king. Look at the next few verses, and we get a little bit farther away when you get over in chapter 17. He did that which was evil in the sight of God. In chapter 21, and he did that after the abominations of the heathen. Isn't that amazing? When Israel ends, and we're going to talk about that, the northern kingdom comes to an end. And so now you've got Judah by itself. And in this class, I'm going to bring up that Judah alone, one of the 15 divisions, and teach about it right here, because we don't have enough time to spend an entire night on it. But we'll come back and talk about how long it stands to it. But here's about the southern king. Now, it's not about the sins of Jeroboam, the sons of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. But here it is. Here's the southern kings. How many kings in the southern kingdom? 19. How many of them are righteous? Well, doesn't look like many of them were. Chapter 21, he did that which was evil. Next, 2 chapters later, another king did that which was evil. 2 chapters later, did evil in the sight of God. Well, 5 verses later, did evil in the sight of God. The next chapter, he did evil in the sight of God. Look at that. Go show the next slide. Chapter 21, he made Judah to sin in doing that which was evil in the sight of God. That's the southern kings. He did that which was evil. He did that which was evil. We did that which was evil. And if you're reading Kings and Chronicles, I think God is trying to tell you people do wrong. 38 kings, and 4 of them are righteous. There's the proof right there. You don't need more than that. Does that clear up the fog? What's happened when Solomon dies? You got that northern kingdom, and they immediately turn away from God. And after 200 years, God said, I've had it up to here. You're out of here. Let's get back to those blue slides, guys. Who's that first king? There he is right there, Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Capital city. What's the most important city? The capital city is Samaria. And so right up here in this area, you've got that northern kingdom, and right there is the city of Samaria, capital city. And so the prophets, like we talk about Moscow and we mean all of Russia, that's what the news media does, and politicians do that very sort of thing. We talk about Tokyo and talk about the capital city. So when you read the prophets in the latter part of the Bible, that's what you're going to keep reading about. Sometimes it will say Samaria. He's not talking about that little city. He's not even talking about that area, which in the New Testament time was the name of all that broad area. It's that entire northern kingdom. And they're referred to by that. What happened to the northern kingdom? Well, they're losing their property. Right above them is Syria. And at first, Syria is the major problem. It's the Golan Heights. Read about that in the news tonight. It's happening. They're shooting missiles out of that down into Israel. That's Syria. But Syria diminishes in power, and there's another nation called Assyria, that becomes the dominant, almost a world power. And so Assyria conquers Syria, and then they're going to go down and they conquer Jerusalem. Do you know what happens to all of the Jews? They conquer this land. What happens to all of those Jews? Look how much it is. There's 85% of the Jewish nation. What happens to it? Well, look at the answer to that. Where are they taken to? Show the next slide, I hope. To many nations. We'll show this on a slide in just a minute to give you some visual understanding of this. You want to destroy a nation? Just move everybody out of it. Move up people from other nations in. That's what the Assyrians did. Every nation that they conquered, they just sort of mixed the blood, and so you don't have any identification as a Jewish nation. They don't have it. They intermarry with all of them. And here's an important date to end, and that is the date it all happened. 606 is when it all happened. And so we got 200 years for the northern kingdom and 300 years for the southern kingdom, which we'll show in just a minute. But the ending date is 722 BC. That's the end of it. And all of a sudden, they're taken into all of the nations. You don't read about Israel anymore. I mean, as a nation, now, after this time, sometimes Israel, the word Israel will be used to refer to the southern kingdom, just like it was used to refer to all of the kingdoms during the days of Solomon and the like. So I try to put a picture on the map. I don't know if pictures help you, graphs like, or maps like that to help you. That's what they did. They just took all of those people and they scattered them all around the world and brought people from other lands into that. And that nation did not exist. There's no way it could exist because they've intermarried, and so for all intents and purposes, they leave God. Let's talk about that southern kingdom now. In the maps, it's in the 15-word map. It's the period that is called Judah alone. Let's move all of this thing about the kingdom of Israel over to the left side of the screen. Now let's look at what happens. Oops, I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry. If you'll take it back there, I thought I was hitting the right button. What about that southern kingdom? Well, it starts in 931 when Solomon dies, same beginning date, and it ends 600 BC. So one kingdom lasts 200, the other one lasts 300. But the rest of the Bible concerns itself with this southern kingdom. The northern kingdom doesn't exist. So now you've got, for another 100 years, you've got Judah by itself. Now then, if I tell you the name of that northern kingdom starts with an I, you know the name of the northern kingdom, and the name of that southern kingdom starts with a J, and what's that? That's Judah. Hope you got that one. Well, this is, if you know how many tribes there are, you got 10 on the one side. What do you expect to have over here on the other side? Can you do the math? Is this too complicated? You know, that's two tribes. And the tribes are Judah and Benjamin. They're the only two tribes that follow the house of David. And so when you get to this, all of a sudden now, even 2 Kings starts talking only about that southern kingdom, because that is the continuity of the Old Testament. And so you can, when you get to the death of Solomon, turn over to 1 Chronicles and just follow the southern kingdom all the way through. And many times it's word for word and exactly the same thing, but you've got to deal with all that northern kingdom and everything that's involved in it. What's the principal tribe? Well, I've already said Benjamin was the smaller one. What's the principal tribe? Well, it's the name of that southern kingdom, and that is, it's Judah, isn't it? The principal tribe. How many kings did they have? They had 19 kings, and there were 4 of them, and that's what it said. How many good kings? I've given the answer before. I ask you for to look into your heart and into your memory. It'd be better for you to do that yourself. How many are the good kings? Do you know their names? Asa, Jehoshaphat, Hezekiah, and Josiah. And we did that one time, and we don't have time to do it again tonight. Crazy way of remembering, but I think it's pretty good. Who's the first king? Well, his name rhymes with Jeroboam. Could you sort of guess what his name is? Rehoboam. I remember being a teenager, early teens, reading about Jeroboam and Rehoboam. Everybody I knew whose name sounded like, they were identical twins. And nobody ever told me different. I had to figure that out myself. I thought Solomon had 2 sons. They were identical twins. One of them was Jeroboam, the other was Rehoboam. I'm a great Bible student, I can really help you understand the Bible. I'm just absolutely wrong. I never taught. I was too dumb for anybody to ask me to teach, and too young by a long shot. But they're true to the house of David. Now, if you want to find the names of the southern kingdom, the kings, it's the begats. You read Matthew chapter 1, Solomon begat Rehoboam. That Rehoboam begat, is there another king before Asa? And Asa begat Jehoshaphat. So two of these kings are early in the history of that southern kingdom. And then it's the pits. It's the pits until you get down to Manasseh, or pardon me, you get down to Hezekiah, and then to Josiah, the last of the kings. Let's look at this. First king, capital city. That's not hard. Jerusalem, all right, go ahead and put that up. What happens to that southern kingdom? Here it is. They're captured by who? By Babylon. They're captured by Babylon. Where are they taken to? Different philosophy. Didn't follow the Assyrian pattern. They took the choices of the young man, the primary, the heart of that nation, and they moved it all over to Babylon. They were taken to Babylon. And when the end date is 606. That'll help you with the fog. I'm driving down the highway, I'm doing 65, and I got Solomon. Okay, there's a fork in the road up here. Now, this road runs parallel in many respects, but man, in some respects, it just goes this way, away from God. If you take the left fork, you're going to wind up in Assyria and be scattered all over the world. You take the right fork, you follow Rehoboam, it's the house of David. And they are the nations that remain somewhat faithful to God. The Bible talks about a remnant, and that is what you have in relationship to all of this. What happens? Well, let's look at the map. Let's learn where Babylon is. I hope you can see where that is. You see where Babylon is? There's the arrow that is there. Oh, that looks like another one I saw. Oh, yeah, look where they went. They went down where Abraham came from, in the place Mesopotamia. Meso meaning middle. Potamia means river. Potamia means rivers. And you see Potamia, if I say potamus, if I say hippopotamus, you know what hippopotamus is? It's a water horse, okay? A river horse. And so Meso is a middle of the river instead of a horse in the river is what it is, okay? That's where it is. I want you to look at that map because here's where we're headed next week, and that is right over here. Media and Persia. What happens in Babylon? Oh, all of a sudden, there's no fog. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Nebuchadnezzar, handwriting on the wall. You know all those stories? Hey, the fog's lifted. I hope you've enjoyed this ride through the fog. You've got some principal characters that are there. We've already mentioned several of them. Go ahead and put that the captivity that's there, and there are the names of those. How many of those names do you recognize? And I put Gabriel up there, and then I thought it might be Michael. I believe it is Michael. Would somebody check about the angel that appears over there? Is it Michael and Gabriel? Is it both of them? I think maybe both of them are mentioned over there. I put that up there, and I meant to check it. But we know those names, do we not? We know Shadrach. We know Shadrach. We know Meshach. Should have gotten up here, and I did. That should have been Meshach. And there's Daniel, and there's Daniel again, and Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar. You got it? Wait a minute. Cyrus. Why is he mentioned? how long are they in captivity? In Babylonian captivity. They went into captivity in 606. Guess what happens in 536? 70 years later, they're ready to come back. In the first year that Cyrus is on the throne, he overthrows Babylon. That's the end of Babylon. Babylon is a nation that is 70 years long, and that's it. America's been here 250 years. Now, Babylon existed as a nobody like America for those first several decades. America was a nobody nation. But it's all Assyria. It's all Nineveh. And then all of a sudden, here's Nebuchadnezzar's father. And he has a general named Nebuchadnezzar, and he takes up and he goes up and destroys Nineveh. Comes over to Jerusalem, ready to take the treasures. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. Is whenever they're over there, his father dies. Who's going to be the next king? Well, he'd better get back home. So in 536, he heads back, but he carries the choicest young men, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So Daniel's over there for 70 years. He's a young man. How old is he when he goes over there? How old is a young man, choicest young man you would take him? Could he be 15 years of age? Could he be 15 years of, and if he's there 70 years, how old would Daniel be? How old would he be when Cyrus comes in? And by the way, guess what they do? Cyrus makes him a ruler of Babylon. Like Nebuchadnezzar made Daniel a ruler in Babylon, Cyrus makes Daniel a ruler over in Syria, or pardon me, over in Persia. If he's 15 when he goes, he's over there 70 years. Hey, how old is he? 85. There's something good about being 85. See if you can figure that out and see why I sort of like that number. There is a place for 85-year-old men, you know. Isn't it amazing, though? Guess who was king when Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were growing up? The last of the four righteous kings, Josiah. They never knew, growing up, or almost never knew, anything other than godly Judah. Josiah comes onto the throne, and he immediately destroys all the idols in the land and restores Judaism. And it's in that brief period of time of the reign of Josiah, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So when Nebuchadnezzar comes down, he takes the choicest young men who've never known anything except the purest kind of Judaism. That's remarkable. What does that say about where you grow up? Are we not a product of the place we've grown up? You look at yourself, you tell me where you grew up, and you know a lot about you. That's it, guys. Next week we'll take it up right here, and we'll talk about the return from captivity, and then we're going to talk about the next 400 years. There's where the fog comes in. I mean, you thought we're in a fog tonight. When we get to those 400 years between the Old Testament and the New Testament, it's a fog. We'll try to clear that one up next week. Thank you very much.